Hello everyone, Bharat this side from InfosecTrain, and welcome to this particular webinar about threat hunting and threat intelligence. Everything which you need to know about threat hunting and threat intelligence, we will be discussing up over here what it is, how it's being done, each and everything we'll be talking about it. So session is being planned as a power hour for threat hunting and threat intelligence. So it will be very crisp, very quick. I won't be taking you to in deep learning and all. I'll just explain you what these things are and we will be talking about certain different methodologies up over here with these, right? So let's get started team up over here for threat hunting and threat intelligence, right? Now threat hunting and threat intelligence guys are today's agenda. So if I do talk about our today's agenda, I have kept it quite short where we will be talking about adversaries, which are actually the brain for the enterprises these days, right? You might be knowing lots of attacker groups up over there. So we will be talking about those adversaries, what they are, and what they do, what's their major motive up over there. So all these things we will be discussing it up over there in these particular adversaries pain for the enterprise. Then we'll talk about what is threat intelligence and threat hunting. Generally people that get confused between these two things, that this is threat intelligence and threat hunting are one of the same thing. Then we'll be talking about leveraging the detection with intelligence and hunting, that how threat detection can be leveraged and how we can accelerate threat detection with the help of threat intelligence and threat hunting. And in the end, we'll talk about several use cases for threat intelligence and threat hunting. And last 10-15 minutes, we'll be giving it to our Q&A session where all of you can put up your any type of questions and I will be up over here to answer all of your queries. So that will be our agenda guys, since we do have limited time period up over here. So let's get started. Always use chat. So adversaries, as you all might be knowing, adversaries, what are adversaries? And actually these days, organizations are facing a lot of challenge for these particular adversaries, because in order to mitigate threats, we need to eliminate all the adversaries. So the first question arises, what is adversaries? Most of you guys might have seen that particular Batman movie. So in that Batman movie, there is a character named Joker, right? So what Joker is to Batman is what adversary is for our organization, right? So anyone who is working opposite to our organization or opponent of our organization will be adversary to our organization, right? So we will be having lots of different types of adversaries up here. So generally people do get confused between threats and adversaries. So I'll just basically clear out your difference up here, that what are threats and what are adversaries. Potential danger to the asset of the organization. Absolutely. So threats basically can be anything which can damage our organization, or we can say that anyone or anything which does have potential to damage our organization is known as threats. Now, adversaries, these are very similar to threats, but threat can be a single person, right? A single insider employee who is turned rogue against the organization can be a threat. So yes, it is a part of adversary, but not adversaries, because adversaries is a collective group of threats, right? Like you might have heard about APT groups, advanced persistent threat groups. So collection of hackers, let's say collectively hackers who are working together in order to disrupt a particular industry or a particular government or a particular organization or a particular sector, that can be collectively called as an advanced persistent threat group, right? APT group. Similarly guys, if you might have heard about nation state sponsored hackers, right? Hackers which are being backed by the government organizations, right? In order to basically disrupt the system services of another government organization, right? So those also can be basically one of your adversaries. So what these adversaries are actually trying to achieve? So adversaries are always trying to either manipulate, interpret, or destroy our systems, data, and everything which is surrounding our environment, right? overall they are trying to basically eliminate our smooth and steady working of our entire environment, right? Entire infrastructure, entire enterprise. So these adversaries, these can be basically the one which are going beyond the things like you guys might have heard about SolarWinds hack. So the attacker group which was behind SolarWinds hack was APT29, Advanced Persistent Threat Group 29, aka we do also call them Cozy Bear, right? So that was the attacker group which was behind SolarWinds hack. Now, how do we get to know about this, right? So there are lots of threat research papers which are being published after the SolarWinds hack, which basically claims that APT29 was behind the entire show of SolarWinds hack, right? So similarly, there are lots of APT groups. There are they do basically name themselves with different name. You might have heard about Gothic Panda, Cozy Bear, Cozy Dukes. All of these basically are the associated or aliases of APT29 group itself. Adversaries we were talking about, so these are there are a lot of adversaries which are there. You guys might have heard about CrowdStrike, right? So they have, we do have Gothic Panda, we do have APT32, APT3. So these adversary groups are basically being created on behalf of their attacks, right? In cases of attacks, we can say that they are targeting one side of industry, let's say one particular sector of industry. They are basically based out of one nation state sponsored. Like it's claimed to be that APT29 is one who is Russian based threat group, right? So these type of activities are always going on, and like APT3, you do know that it's being claimed to be as Chinese-based threat groups, right? So different adversary groups are being backed by, claimed to be backed by different nation state sponsored, and who are hacking different sort of industries, right? So someone can attack, let's say, government and sector, someone can attack financial sector. So these attacker groups are basically what we do call as adversaries, right? All these attacker groups are basically what we do call as adversaries. Sounds good, everyone? And the reason they are going to be the more pain for us is because it's simple, right? In order to, we always basically look for our vulnerabilities in our environment, right? We always go for our vulnerability. We always goes for the threats in our environment. So we cannot eliminate all the threats, all the vulnerabilities until and unless we try to find our adversaries and we eliminate themselves in itself, right? Or at least we are, if we are not able to eliminate our adversary, what we can do is we can try to eliminate the chances of that adversary reaching to our organization, right? So we should be basically focusing upon that particular adversary in order to basically prevent ourselves apart from the one which we do have up over here, right? Like vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, we always do, right? That's our security. But how we can proactively prevent ourselves from these particular types of adversaries, so we can basically work upon that, right? And that's where the use case and need of threat intelligence and threat hunting comes into the picture. So threat hunting and threat intelligence, first of all I'll just explain you what threat intelligence is, then what threat hunting is, and then what is the difference between both of them, right? So that's how we will be talking about on this particular slide. So threat intelligence, guys, in order to basically explain you threat intelligence, I will just bifurcate these two different terms, threat and intelligence, right? So threat, as we all do know that anyone who does have potential to damage can be a threat to the organization, right? And intelligence, as you might have seen in those particular spy movies and all, there are intelligence agencies who always try to collect the information, who always try to be a one step ahead, right? About their attackers movement, so that they can capture them on time and they can prevent the attack, isn't it? Same concept applied up over here. Intelligence is basically something which is known as an actionable data or information against the threats, which we will be collecting in a proactive manner so that we can know that who is going to attack us, how they are going to attack us, what sort of capabilities they would be having while they are attacking, and all these particular parts, right? So that's what we do call as threat intelligence. Now again, threat intelligence is not something which is only a data. It is something which we can say a precise information which we will be collecting for all of our emerging or existing threat actors. Now, how you might be thinking that, Bharat, how we can collect threat intelligence or intelligence about emerging threat actors, like the threat actors whom we do not know, right? So we will be talking upon that as well. These threat intelligence sources are there. So generally, if I do divide threat intelligence in terms of collection, not in terms of consumer, but in terms of collection, threat intelligence can be divided into two parts: behavior based threat intelligence and reputational based threat intelligence. So behavioral based threat intelligence majorly focuses upon TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures, right? Whereas reputational based threat intelligence majorly focuses upon IOCs, indicators of compromise. Now, combining them together, we do basically collect the threat intelligence. Now, let's say if Joker is basically your adversary who is going to attack you, or who is known as one of your known threat actors who can attack you, right? So, what sort of info you will be collecting against them? Against that joker, you will be collecting that particular joker's movements, right? Behavior, that how does he attacks, what sort of tools or weapons he does uses for attacks, isn't it? So same way for our adversary also, we will be collecting the behavior, like what sort of tactics they do use in attack, what sort of techniques they do use in attack, right? And what sort of tools they do use in attack, what are their capabilities, whom they have attacked in past, what likely are their methods to attack, right? What sort of threat vector they do chooses when they do attack. So all this information we will be collecting for the threats who can attack us, and we will be feeding it to our automated monitoring solutions like SIM and all, where we will be looking around these particular data, right? So that's what threat intelligence is, right? It's just a one part. Now, second, what you can collect about that particular adversary is that what sort of URLs they are using to share the malwares, what sort of domains they are using to host the malware, what sort of IPs are there, what sort of files and what sort of file hashes are there. So all these reputational data which belongs to the adversary as a known malicious data in terms of signatures of that adversary, that also we will be collecting in our organization, and we will be monitoring and having a close look on that particular data, that if something out of this particular data set matches to something which our organization is in communication with, then we can say that we might be having an indicator of compromise within our system, and that's where we can start threat hunting, right? So that was, guys, threat intelligence. Now if I do have to basically say threat hunting, you might have seen that hunting in movies and all, right? What they do, they basically do find out the target and they do hunt the target. So that's what we do up over here. So threat hunting is a process where we actively look for bad actors on our network. Now it's not always that it you will be looking out for only the actors on your system. Once you determine that yes, there is a bad actor, right? It's not a reactive approach in nature. Again, threat hunting is a proactive approach in nature, where what you will be doing, you will be thinking that there is an attacker, right? Always threat hunting works always on an assumption that there is an attacker within our organization who is basically attacker or an adversary within our organization, where we will be having that assumption that one or more of our systems are being compromised, and with the intent of gathering the evidences, that how that system got compromised, we do basically go around for threat hunting, right? So what we do is we do basically take certain endpoints, specific endpoint system that we think might be impacted, and we focus upon certain behavioral traits. We try to match something specific like a static pattern of attack. We can see, for an example, we can try to identify a C2 communication being happened from this endpoint device, right? So that is something which can be a part of threat hunting. Now guys, this versus which we were talking about, threat intelligence versus threat hunting. Now what is difference? So difference, I would say something like this, that the job when we do threat intelligence, that means we do actively collect data about the threat actors, right? From all over the internet, all over the uh, informational resources, we do collect the information about the threat actors. And once we are done with that, that's when threat hunting starts. So that means we can say that threat hunting starts when threat intelligence is completed, right? So threat intelligence will be completed and then threat hunting will be started, right? So threat intelligence, as we discussed already, it will be basically something which will be having the information, and taken that particular information, assuming that system might be compromised with this sort of data, we do start investigating our system so that we can find out those particular endpoints, we can find out those particular reputational or behavioral traits of our intelligence which we have collected against the threat within our system, so that we can find out the threats and we can eliminate those particular threats, right? So that is what difference between threat intelligence and threat hunting is. Threat intelligence will be only the collection. Based upon that collection, when you are investigating into a system, you are analyzing a system, you are finding the threats, actively finding the threats within the system, that would be threat hunting. Something or someone who does have potential to damage, right? So that's the difference. So penetration test focuses upon vulnerabilities and threat hunting focuses upon threats. So that's the major difference up over here, right? So vulnerabilities basically are something which are flaw. So in penetration test, what we do is we do take upon that particular vulnerabilities. We do try to exploit those particular vulnerabilities in every possible way so that we can patch that vulnerability before attacker basically takes the advantage of that particular vulnerability. That's what penetration test is. And next we do have threat hunting. So hunting would be having an assumption that system is compromised and attacker is within the system. We do start investigating the system to find out the attacker's whereabouts or to find out the attacker's traces as a evidential data so that we can eliminate the unwanted or unauthorized access or unwanted or unauthorized attempts being made to our system or to our data, right? So that's what threat hunting is. So this was difference between threat intelligence, threat hunting, and penetration test. Next, guys, leveraging the detection with intelligence and hunting. Guys, let's take upon a situation up over here. Let's say you have been asked to fight someone, right? And you are being asked, given a particular week, that get ready for the fight. It can be any sort of fight. We are not talking about those violence and everything. So let's say you have to fight against attacker or adversary, right? Now what chances do you think you do have in a week's time which will be helping you to basically eliminate the attacker? How much chances out of 10 you would be having? We do not know who is the our opponent, right? What if I give you the power that, or an advantage that, I can profile your enemy, I can profile your attacker for you? So do you think that your chances would be increased? There was a situation one, scenario one, where you do not know who is going to attack you, just an attacker is going to attack you. That's all, right? Second, if I do talk about that, with this particular special power which I'm going to give you, you will be able to understand that who is going to attack you, what sort of capabilities they would be having, what sort of attack pattern they would be having, what sort of, we can say, tactics techniques they will be using, what sort of tools would be in their arsenal, right? And what motive would be there in them, right? So this is something which I provide you all the information with. So do you think that out of 10 your chances would be increased in order to defend or attack, fight against the attacker? Yes or no? Absolutely yes, right? So of course our chances will be increased that we would be able to fight against the attacker. That's what, guys, threat intelligence does, right? In order to do the threat detection, intelligence plays a crucial role where it converts our unknown unknowns. That means where a dilemma where we do not know who is going to attack us, how they are going to attack us. With increased intelligence, it can help us to convert into known knowns. And once we do have this known knowns, it becomes very easy for us to basically fight against those attackers and increase our chances and odds against different threat actors or adversaries, right? So that's what basically we do have in threat intelligence. Understood? Now, how threat intelligence would be helpful, because that's only data collection for the attackers, right? Now, one thing, guys, if I do tell you that you have increased your chances, right? You have increased your chances for detection just by collecting the information about attacker. But what if you do not have anything to work upon that information, right? How you will be protecting yourself? So that's where threat hunting comes into the picture. And threat hunting basically states that this is the part where we will be working upon the attacker's methodology. So what we do is we take the attacker's methodology, we go within our systems, and we try to basically find some attack patterns. We try to basically find certain activities. We do a system wide search for bad actors, right? So threat hunting would be beginning, as I already mentioned, where threat intelligence ends. And a more successful threat hunt can basically identify the threats that were not being spotted in the wild yet. That means those 0-day attacks which we were talking about, combination of threat intelligence and threat hunting can increase our chances for these sort of 0-day attacks, right? Now question arises how they would be increasing. Since you are not knowing who is going to attack you, now with intelligence you know that who is going to attack you. You collect that information that okay, if Bharat is going to attack me, I know that Bharat's way of attacking is using phishing for initial compromise, right? Bharat always uses a phishing email through which he compromises the target person, right? So this is something which you collected that info with the help of intelligence. So once you collected that info with the help of intelligence, next what you would be doing, you would be finding within your system, right? You will be taking that information, you will do a hunt within your system that is there any sort of email which looks like solicited phishing email or can be from Bharat, right? So you will look around your email web server logs, any sort of anomaly, any sort of traces, which can basically ID the attacker, right? Or attacker's pattern. So that's how, guys, this was just a small example which I have taken of intelligence and hunting together to eliminate or to increase our chances to eliminate threat actors. Okay, the question is that how do we know the attackers TTPs, tactics, techniques, procedures, because there are thousands of attacks on live phase, and how we can be 100% sure about the threat actors and their techniques. So that's where threat intelligence plays the role, right? Threat intelligence is never to collect the information about the attacks. Threat intelligence is always to collect the information about the attackers, right? So let's say you do have a log, right? In that log you try to identify that what sort of activity has happened. You take that information, you go through certain different threat intelligence platform, and in order to, just since your question states around TTPs, the most reliable platform in order to collect the information against TTPs would be MITRE attack framework, right? attack.mitre.org. So what you can do, you can go on that MITRE attack org, where you can see that in that particular log, system 32 folder was being used, right? There was PowerShell.exe was being used for in order to basically run certain script. So now MITRE will be giving you that information. You search the same information about on MITRE, that how many adversaries are there who does uses PowerShell in order to execute the scripts. You basically search that on MITRE. MITRE gives you a list of adversaries, that these can be the adversaries who can do this activities, who uses, like who have in past used PowerShell for exploitation. So you take those list of 10 adversaries, then you basically start refining your process, right? How you will refine? You will see that out of 10, 6 of them are the ones who does not have interest in your industry, who has never attacked your type of industry. 4 are there who has done that in past. Now you refine more, and that's how basically you do collect intelligence. Intelligence is not collecting the information about the exact adversary, it's collecting the information about all the possible adversaries, right? If Sam always attacks you, it's not always that you will be only collecting the information about Sam and you will be feeling safe, right? There can be another people apart from Sam who can attack you, right? So you will collect the information of all the people who are like Sam and are very likely to attack you, and then you will be able to basically do the hunting against them. Demi, we are not collecting the footprints. So what we are doing is we are trying to collect the attack pattern, right? So there is one concept of pyramid of pain, right? So this all intelligence and everything in terms of behavior I'm talking about, in terms of TTPs I'm talking about, is going on. One thing, that behaviors are always hard to change. I'll tell you the reason why, right? We always do have a schedule or a habit, right? That we do wake up, we do get dressed, we do go to office, we do basically read some stuff, we do our work. Now all of a sudden, someone asks you tomorrow to wake up at a different time, to do a different activity, to go through a different office, to do a different sort of job. Will that be easy for you to accept all the changes? Way, attackers also does have the same thing, habits, right? Attackers are also people like us. They are also creature of habits. So always this particular TTPs is been on assumption that they do have certain standard types of habits, and based upon those habits we do basically understand their behavior, and we do monitor that behavior in our environment, right? Let's say phishing for initial compromise, right? PowerShell for script execution, masquerading for defense evasion, right? In order to basically hide myself, I always use masquerading. That means if there is a system process lss.exe, I'll try to rename myself as lss.exe so that I can hide myself, right? So all this information you will be collecting against me, right? Like, who will be giving you? Platforms like MITRE will be giving you all this information. You do have Palo Alto Unit 24 threat intel team. You do have different sites and people who will be basically, lots of platforms are there, commercial threat feeds are there who can basically give you this information, and based upon that information you basically create a list of pattern, that this is how the attacks are going on, and this is how we can detect the attacks, right? Yeah. So also just to add up over here, that threat hunting is not always about going for a specific threat actor, that Bharat is the threat actor. Let's find Bharat's traces in the system. Threat hunting is find the anomaly in the system. Anything which is not regular, which is not as per my baseline, I'll always try to collect that information, and using threat intelligence, I can ID that particular information, that this is something which I've seen in my system, which is happening in my system. Is there any attacker group which does the same sort of thing? Right? Then I do match both the things. If I do get anything, that's fine. Else, anyway, it's a win-win situation because I got something suspicious out of my system and now I eliminated it. right? So threat hunting is not any way about just hunting for a specific type of threat actor. That's a type of threat hunting. Threat hunting is always looking for the anomalies within this system. What kind of knowledge as a beginner we need to get our hands on threat intelligence? You can start basically with, I would say, NIST nice framework. CTI analyst is there, you can see that particular part. You can learn about basics of threat intelligence from different platforms up over there. You can go for a training on threat intelligence where you can learn in detail that what is threat intelligence, how it's being collected. So there are a lot of ways to basically start with. And as per me, apart from all these particular standard ways, the best way which I would basically choose in order to basically start with threat intelligence would be to get my more hands-on and to get my own more experience on OSINT, open source intelligence gathering. So if you are good at Googling things, if you are good at open source intelligence, then definitely you do will be learning very easily as threat intelligence, right? OSINT plays a crucial role in terms of threat intelligence, right? So you can start with OSINT, I would say, as a beginner. ARK05, like this is the question which might take an entire day. Thousands of random attacker, thousands of different methods are there. So there can be different ways of attacking. So basic attack methods can include ransomwares, can include we can say malwares, can include vulnerability exploitations, right? There are different sort of attack methods. So just to basically give a one list would be very hard up over here, right? Next theme, use cases of threat intelligence in threat hunting, right? So I'll just start with again threat intelligence use cases, that what are the use cases for threat intelligence. Then we'll talk about the use cases of threat hunting as well. So where threat intelligence would be helpful, as we already discussed, right? Threat intelligence, we can collect information about our adversaries. So where do you think threat intelligence will be useful? Like first thing which comes into my mind is incident response, isn't it? Threat intelligence in terms of incident response might be reducing the incident responders pressure in multiple ways, right? Like it will be helping us to and identify whether it's attack or not and eliminate the false positive. It will be enriching the alerts with real-time context, like there can be risk scores, there can be comparison from internal and external sources, and things can be finded out that this can be threat or this cannot be threat, right? Threat intelligence helps in security operations center, since with an automated process and an AI, with an automated process and an AI, we can basically collect threat intelligence and feed it to our sim solution or our basically we can say another inline defenses, so that we can monitor upon those particular adversaries, because SOC we do know as a 360 bird eye view of our entire architecture or our entire enterprise, right? It's a 360 bird eye security bird eye view, I would say. So there is SIM solution which is collecting logs from everywhere in every organization these days, right? So what if you feed that threat intelligence to that SIM, that in all the system, in all the devices, in all the firewalls, routers, switches, anywhere, if you do see any sort of system device is communicating to this sort of threat data, do give us alert, right? So that is something which can be very powerful, and that is how threat intelligence can help in SOC. Absolutely, Demi. SIM and TI is basically one of the best things which is already going on in the market, right? Then vulnerability management. Threat intelligence can help in vulnerability management as well. How? Because up or here as a vulnerability management, right? Threat intelligence also helps in risk analysis, right? Risk modeling is basically something which can be done via threat intelligence, as threat intelligence will provide context that will help the risk models to make a defined risk measurement and to be more transparent in terms of taking assumptions, in terms of basically getting the outcomes or having the derivable variables, right? So it can help us that which like just one example of risk assessment I would like to give up here. The threat intelligence can help us that which threat actors are basically using the attack and do they target our industry or not, right? So is the risk associated with this sort of threat actor or not, right? Another example which I can give is what kind of damage or in terms of technical and financial damage can be done by this sort of threat actor, right? Or which this threat actor has caused to the enterprises like ours, right? Let's say I'm a telecom industry, right? I'm doing the risk assessment against the threat actors. So threat intelligence will be helping me with the data, which can help me to basically define the risk about that threat actor. That in that telecom industry, this threat actor, how previously has attacked, what sort of attacks it has done previously, what sort of activities it has done previously, right? So that is something which we can find it out with threat intelligence, right? So these were guys few of the I would say use cases of threat intelligence. Now if I do talk about use cases of threat hunting, so again threat hunting basically provides us context for security events, right? So there are certain use cases of threat huntings like with threat intelligence and machine learning, we can use these threat hunting solutions, which can have the like even I would say not just threat hunting solutions with machine learning, I can have new era solution which can basically learn from the previous threat and can apply for the next threat, right? So it can provide us detailed context for the known and the unknown threats both. Anomaly detection, threat hunting basically helps us in anomaly detection as we are always looking for the anomalies, right? So threat hunting is one of the best or I would say the easiest way in order to basically find out the anomalies within the system, right? So this is something up over here for threat hunting use cases as well. Apart from it, threat hunting can always basically help us in advanced threat detections, I would say. How in advanced threat detection? Like alerts from the system, security system. So as soon as you get alert in your SIM solution that this basically can be an incident or not, once you have verified that it's an incident, you can do threat hunting within that system to find out the anomaly, right? You can always find out the new vulnerabilities with the help of threat hunting, right? Like new vulnerabilities, timelines, which users are being affected, all these data you can always find out. And in threat hunting, as I already mentioned that we do always have assessments, so we can create hypotheses, right? Certain hypotheses on basis of which we can do different sort of threat hunting, right? So hypothesis would be basically something which you will be creating that I do have a hypothesis that there can be threat actors presence within my system, right? So I can have five different types of hypotheses and I can do five different type of threat hunts so that I will be covering my majorly or more attack surface area, right? So all these things basically guys can be the answer for use cases of threat intelligence and threat hunting. So this was a small power hour session about threat intelligence and threat huntings, what they are, what they were.